Today we have with us Ben and Curtis from Outbound Funnel. They are and I warned you guys I was going to introduce you as the Wizards of Workflow. They have onboarded over 500 outreach customers and help find that platform nirvana that I'm sure you're joining us today to achieve. And so I'm just going to hand it over to you guys to do a little bit more in-depth intro of yourselves and your company.
Absolutely. Well, my name's Ben McWilliams. I've been working on outreach onboardings for about 4 years now. Curtis started the company when outreach was pro-serve. So we're kind of the first to start teaching people how to use it and have been doing it ever since. So yeah, about 500 onboardings personally, which has been a ton of fun. It means I've gotten to work with an incredibly broad amount of different types of clients. So I get to see all the different ways that outreach can work, all the different ways that outreach can integrate, because no two companies are the same. So it's been a really exciting journey, and it's allowed us to see the product from really every possible angle. So that's why we're really excited to kind of share some of our learnings with you, but also hopefully to get some information from you guys so I can make a couple personalized recommendations right here on the call, and you can see our methodology, our approach, kind of how we look at these problems and how we put the pieces that you already have together to create something that's going to be really effective. Before I joined Outbound Funnel, I was over at Airbnb doing some pretty similar work, kind of going from team to team, evaluating the tools that they used and building an individual tool set. And that company was broken up enough that I kind of got to do it over and over again, not just once. So that's kind of what I like to do. Take a look at a puzzle, see all the pieces you have, and try to build the tallest tower we can to deliver the most value. So that's kind of my side of things.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. So I'm Curtis Rock, and I apologize for not being on video. We are having a rolling blackout where I'm at in Northern California, and it's triple-digit heat. So I am sitting in the passenger side of a car. So forgive any wind noise from the vents, and I apologize for no video. But I am the CEO and founder of Outbound Funnel. We are actually the first pro serve, or actually pre-pro serve partner for outreach. And we kind of got started on the fact that I was running a different company before this. I was trying to automate the SDR, and I felt that instead of automating and taking the human element out of the SDR position, how do we actually empower the SDR, and how do we encourage that SDR? Which is when Manny and I had met up at the first Unleashed, which is the outreach big event that they have every year, or at least were before COVID. And we've done 500 we've done 500 onboardings from 5-person strong to Fortune 500. We focus on global footprint and our veteran powered community. So we really look at the veterans community first when we're doing our hiring. And a lot of our staff are coming from transition and veterans. Before this, most of my time has been spent on finding efficiencies in the sales process. I started off carrying a bag and actually working in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And we were doing wine sales for Meyer and Kroger and a couple of other large establishments. Then found myself looking at tech side of things, built a company that did point of sale systems for restaurants, sold that in 2013, and then was off to the races on figuring out how do I get this to scale faster, and what can I leverage in tools to allow me to do that. And it's been a natural progression to outreach. So since then, Ben and I have been really running the helm on this, and I appreciate the introduction. Being masters at the product, but it's ever changing. So we are just trying to keep ourselves relevant and making sure that we're using all of the updates that outreach continues to put up with all the advancements that they've made in progress. So Ben, I'll let you kind of lead us, just given my handicap for today. But any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So I just want to give you guys a round of applause. Thank you for being veteran, looking out for our veterans. But before we get into the content, I wanted to launch a poll. We're here to talk about platform cohesion. So I just wanted to launch this poll. You guys wanted to know, how many other tools do you have integrated with Outreach today? Just a real quick poll if you guys want to drop an answer in there. Okay.
Okay, so we've got some people dipping their toes in, and we've got some power users on the integration side too, in some instances here, as well as some people who it looks like are getting started but could possibly see a lot more value as we start to connect more things. So this is good to see. Um, does mean this is the right audience for this webinar, so that's already a great sign.
That's awesome. Is this something typical that you'd see between 2 and 3 integrations?
I'd say a lot of it depends on how long people have had the product and the complexity of their org. I have worked with companies who actually don't have a CRM because they're so fledgling, they're just turning up a sales team from scratch and they just do everything out of outreach. But then when I see a larger enterprise client who has maybe 16 different tools, I'd see, 4 or 5, maybe even as much as 8 start to integrate with outreach.
Wow.
So I'd say for those that have 0 or 2 or 3, there's a good chance there might be 1 to 3 or 4 more that you could actually add in. So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today, of kind of how we can get more out of that. But again, it's all about what's a good fit. But this does mean we've got some potential here.
That's great. Well, okay, you guys get excited. There is potential. And to show you real live, we're going to play Stump, Ben, and Curtis. So during this presentation, anytime, just drop a list of the tools that you use, and the Wizards of Workflow are going to try and come up with some workflow opportunities in your tool stack today. So I invite you to do that right now. But I'll also hand it over to Ben. I think you had some things you wanted to show.
Yeah, so I have a couple diagrams that I want to show just to talk about the types of workflows that are possible. So the biggest thing that I don't think people realize is that for the most part, all of your tools can control each other. That Outreach has some pretty easy to use automation and very easy to set up integrations. And that is true really across many of the different platforms that you use, that they all play well together. So I want to get away from the idea of we have these separate tools that we're using in separate ways and that our process is somewhat driven by their capability. We really want to stick to the idea of our process drives the way our tools are configured. So we come up with the ideal workflow for our team, and then the tools need to automate that and act as one cohesive tool. It's about making it as simple and cohesive for the end user, because that's what's going to make them efficient, effective, get them talking to the right people, get them spending less time on things, or get them using their time where it's going to have the greatest impact. So that's really the idea. If all of these work together in concert, in cohesion, I know I keep saying that word, but it does fit for pretty much the whole theme of this presentation. But if we make it a cohesive tool, it's going to make them significantly more successful. So I've got a couple diagrams. Now, these are just teasers. These are kind of some of the bigger things that are possible. In these examples, I'm going to be linking, 4 or 5 things together at a time. Doesn't mean we can't get a lot of benefit from just linking 1 or 2, but I want to kind of build your appetite by showing some of the big things that are possible. So let's jump right in. 1 second. All right. I'd ask if you can see my screen, but I know you're muted, so my apologies there. Let me zoom in a little bit, just because that's a bit aggressive for our eyes on a Tuesday after a 3-day weekend. So this is just one example. I'd love to have it a little flashier with colors, but it is Lucid Chart. So I'm assuming that some of you have a chat program. Maybe, actually, that would be this one. Here we go. So I'm assuming you have a chat program. Maybe that is Drift, maybe that's Intercom, maybe that is another tool. I do know that Drift and Intercom both have excellent native integrations with Outreach. So let's talk about what that means. So Drift is amazing because it has immediacy, it has urgency. When you're talking to somebody in Drift, that is somebody who's trying to get in touch with you right now. And while I can't quote the exact study, the last I heard, if you reach somebody in the first 5 minutes of them trying to contact you, you're going to double the chances of it becoming a sale. And the reason is because right after contacting you, if they don't get a reply, they are on your competitor's website contacting them. So it's kind of the strike while the iron is hot, reel in the fish while it's biting the line, that type of deal. But the thing is, since you have Outreach, which is connected to all your other tools and has all that automation capability, now not only does Drift offer that automation or that urgency and immediacy to Outreach, Outreach can use it to trigger anything else in your tech stack with the same immediacy and urgency. So here's just one example. Somebody comes to your website and they start chatting you in Drift. Not the greatest diagram here, but you get the idea. They go into Drift, they're starting to have a conversation with you. We use Drift to request booking a meeting. If they do book a meeting, we move them into Outreach. Now we put them into a sequence to remind them that the event is coming up, and we also send them a gift through Sendoso. Now, at no point did any team member touch this. And we've gone from chatting somebody to booking a meeting to sending them emails to remind them and thanking them for booking the meeting, as well as sending them a present. And I could keep this going. If they no-show to a meeting, I can put them back into another Outreach sequence. Or if they didn't book a meeting, I can kick them over to Marketo and have them put into a Marketo nurture campaign. So you can even be passing things back to your marketing department just by using these flows and by using this automation. Another example, a little further down. Let's say you've integrated your data provider, your ZoomInfo, your Bombora, any of them. And we suddenly get new information about our entire list of prospects. The thing is, we already have some triggers that will auto-sequence people once they have a specific title or company size. Now, suddenly 500 people meet that criteria. We put them in a persona-specific sequence. So immediately, as soon as somebody's getting a promotion or we're getting the up-to-date information, we are making sure that they are served relevant content. Now, let's say they don't reply. Well, if you finish a sequence without a reply, we can use a rule set to automatically change their stage, again, which is going to map back to lead status or contact stage if you prefer. So the rule set changes their stage. A stage-based trigger adds them to another sequence. Now they're being nurtured. So anybody who's just kind of ignoring us, we can keep them on the back burner, again, with no interaction from your team. Then over here, let's say they do reply. All right, then we're going to add them to a high-touch sequence. This is where your team starts to get involved. Now, instead of getting generic messaging, they're getting some really customized messaging. Your team is maybe looking at them through LinkedIn Sales Navigator without even having to leave Outreach, because again, there's another integration right there. And then from there, we can maybe share them a relevant video from Vidyard, another integration. They book a meeting, again, rule set changes the stage, set a follow-up sequence, and give them another gift through Sendoso. Now, I know I'm mentioning specific products here. There are other video programs that also integrate. Sendoso integrates, so does Alice. Really, at any of these stages, I mean, Gong or Chorus, all of these things can loop in. Outreach does a very good job of being partner agnostic. So they usually partner with the person who's the best in their space and their main competitor because they want to get everybody able to use this product. So realistically, if anybody wants to try and stump me, or at least just have some fun here, if you want to maybe list 4 or 5 things in your tech stack, maybe they're integrated already, maybe they aren't. But I've got a blank Lucid chart here, just kind of waiting for a workflow if anybody's got any interest. So chat tools, call coaching tools, maybe you have a power dialer that you want to use. Maybe you're using Chili Piper or another meeting booking tool. Okay, here we go.
Whoa.
Nice. All right.
Told you, man. You gotta be careful with what
Yeah, no, this is great. There are a couple I don't even know in here, so that's amazing. All right.
All right, Ben. We might have to get send Mike a prize if you're not.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna have to take a second
It's
here.
gonna be a big Lucid chart.
All right.
Yeah.
I think overall the sentiment, while Ben kind of composes himself, overall the sentiment is these are really, really powerful tools. And they allow us to look at the customer revenue journey as holistic as possible. So whether that's that first initial contact from a website visit or a chat bot or some kind of inquiry, all the way through renewals, these tools are designed to allow us to be better at our job and efficient for the customer. So that way, most of these buying decisions are made without us as salespeople. They're made through the experience that they're having. They're made through the research that's available. They're made through just timing and budget that are set by the board. So if we can make that a seamless or more cohesive experience from the customer standpoint, that's what these tools were originally designed to do. And Outreach has been amazing at making sure that they continue to incorporate new partnerships and new abilities, and with Kaya being released and all of the other different tools that they have in their house, it's something that you have to be able to stay up to date on, and they get more powerful by the day. So, we get to have a lot of fun, and Ben is really a mastermind at putting these things together as he's trying to build this vineyard, or not vineyard, but this Lucid chart. But, at the end of the day, if you're only connecting one or two tools to this, you're missing out on what you're already paying for. And we want to make sure that you're getting the most out of the tools, because it doesn't cost anything more to build out that revenue flow. It just takes a little bit of time and some planning. How you doing over there, buddy?
I'm going to actually show everybody how the sausage gets made. So you've done a good job and stumped Ben, which I'm very impressed with. A lot of these tools are pretty niche. So I'm going to show you how I actually approach it from the beginning. So realistically, the first spot I'm going to look, and this is just a valuable exercise to do in general. So I would take a look at your entire tech stack, just make a list of all the tools you're using regularly, and then maybe even go over to IT and ask what tools other departments are currently using. That way you can start to see what is even potentially possible in terms of integrations. From there, where I always come back to is right here in Outreach Product Integrations, this page. Realistically, I would set yourself a calendar reminder to, let me find the chat again, to come back and check here maybe every 2 months, just because they are adding integrations at a ridiculously fast pace. Here's our chat. Or it isn't. There we go. All right, one moment. So here in the Outreach Integrations page, we can see up to date all of the third-party and first-party integrations that are coming out here. I can browse by just native ones. Now, those are going to be incredibly easy to set up. A couple clicks, you put in your login. Some of the supported ones, a lot of these are still very turnkey, Drift, the Vidyard especially. And then some of the third-party integrations, a lot of these are still pretty easy, but if they aren't, don't blame Outreach because they didn't build them. That said, most of these work quite well. The other thing that we can do is come right in here and search directly for what integrations exist. So as a piece of homework, I would just say, take a look at your tech stack. Is anything here that isn't already integrated? Is there anything that you could connect? And then more importantly, if you notice that something isn't on this list, is there something you could replace it with that is? Because most of these tools are priced similarly to their competitors. In all these spaces, people are really trying to mimic each other's functionality. So while it seems a little painful to shift from one platform to another, it's going to be worth it, because having a fully integrated platform or cross-platform tech stack is so incredibly powerful that if you're using something like Zoom Info or Bombora that doesn't actually integrate, it might be worth considering switching to one of the ones that does, just to be able to have that full integration capability. Now, just because it's not on this page, it doesn't mean it is impossible. This is where the low-hanging fruit are. This is where the ones that have already been pre-built that are really handy are. That said, there are plenty of small companies and customization houses that will do other API integrations. So if you hear things like Woodpecker that you haven't heard of, you can just quickly look Woodpecker. And sometimes, Woodpecker might actually have that ability through APIs right here. So we can start to look at what is possible. Same with Reply, they actually do integrate. So while you did catch me with a lot of some of the niche ones that I don't know quite as well.
There's also some redundancy in there. There's a little bit of there's a little overlap on the list, but yes, it's a pretty extensive niche list that he was able to Google.
I
up
was
there.
impressed. I know like 14 tools, and none of them were on that list. So that's pretty good.
But would that be like a common tech stack? Like, if you look through that, what would be, I guess, a common combination that you would think of out of that list
Usually,
of 14?
I mean, usually what I would see as a common tech stack, let me get back over to my other page, back to our diagrams.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of overlaps on here. Like Mixmax, I'd be curious to how they're using that in correlation with Outreach, given that they're pretty much the same tool.
Mm.
Send and Blue is a very niche tool. But you're normally looking at things like Sixth Sense, Drift. You're probably even looking at from instead of just looking at an SDR side of things, but if you're looking at it from renewals or growth AE, you're able to add in maybe some gain site. And if somebody's having some open tickets, if they hit a certain threshold of tickets that are open, we can have a automation trigger that will send out an email that just says, hey, noticing that there's a lot of volume here. Is there something that we can talk about that we can, address immediately? So that way, when it does come time to renewals, we're ahead of that and we're having those open conversations. Because the great thing that we've seen with Outreach is they're always open to hearing what they can do better. And if there's something that someone needs to have in their tech stack and it's just not being supported right now, they do a great job of putting that on a roadmap and delivering that for the customer. So it's an extensive tech stack. I don't know exactly where this company is coming from or why they would need to have a budget for such a list. But I think maybe Ben can just go through kind of a common tech stack that may be more helpful for the group.
Mike did really try and stump you. So that was
I was impressed.
Great job.
That was good. Hey, I asked for it.
That's awesome.
That's on me.
And now I know Ben well enough that he will have mapped this out on his own personal time because he just wants to know the answers.
Completely. So Mike, I'm saving that list.
Leave your email. He'll get it to
you. And this right here, while a pretty wild diagram, and there are plenty of other connections that could be drawn here, this is a lot of what I'd see. Now, for Marketo, really, these are just broad categories. So for Marketo, let's just say really any broad email blast marketing automation tool. Vidyard, any email sharing tool. Drift could just as easily be intercom. Zoom, whatever service you want. Zoom Info, whatever data provider you want. Whatever meeting booker you want. Gift giver, chat program, etc. So realistically, it's just recognizing that all of these connections are possible and that all of it can be triggered from Outreach. That essentially, Outreach isn't just where your work is done. It is the brain center for what triggers everything else because it's so easy to build automation and Outreach. And don't get me wrong, you can build incredible automation in Salesforce if you're an engineer. You can do literally anything as possible in Salesforce. It's just a much heavier lift. Outreach is built to actually be used by managers, by team admins, by team leads, not just people who've devoted their entire career just to learning how to configure it. So you can be leading your team with an idea of what you'd like your integration to be, what you'd like your workflow to be, and you're not going to have to go to somebody else and describe it to them. You'll be able to build it yourself. So really, all of these connections are possible. And to echo what Curtis was saying, Outreach isn't just for SDRs. Huge miss when people think about it that way. There is nothing stopping us from connecting these. Salesforce can connect to Zendesk, so can Slack. Suddenly, you have your support team using Outreach as the basis for all of their work. Sales sees what support is doing, vice versa. You're not spending twice as much money by trying to have engineers supporting 2 different tools at the same time. Double your licensing. You can get a better deal by having more seats. These are just the type of things that we want to think about, that anything that has an arrow leaving Outreach and going to it can suddenly be triggering automation and activity and having a very much a multi-step flow.
Ben, you guys have mentioned renewals quite a bit, and just talking about the integrations kind of sparked some possible scenarios. Let's say, for instance, I'm customer just jumped off a webinar, heard about some great new feature that's being released. I jump on chat and say like, hey, I need to talk to somebody about X, Y, and Z. They're not, maybe the account is your account, but particular department you never worked with before. But like this account is like A plus account for you. Like, what does that look like? What is it like? What's the flow?
I love that. So first off, in outreach, we're already going to know that they attended the webinar because we're connected to Salesforce, and so is Marketo or whoever you're using. When any of the webinar platforms do as well. So in Salesforce, we already know that they've attended the webinar. So when they hit, when they hit Drift over here, we are pre-qualifying them and sending them to a specific chatbot only for people who already have attended the webinar. So it already has that context. Now, the moment that they're getting offers specific to that. So let's say it's a specific product. We can say, are you interested in learning more? Can we send you a white paper, or would you like to book a meeting? But let's say they don't book a meeting. Obviously, that is what we want, but they do express interest in a white paper. So we send that out, add them to an outreach sequence. That outreach sequence says, hey, you just got the white paper. Let's give you a quick call, see what you thought of it. Here's some other pieces of material that are a good fit for people interested in that product. Mm-hmm. Now let's try to book a meeting. Maybe they don't show any interest, and then maybe later on we send them a gift. Maybe we look them up on LinkedIn through Sales Navigator, realize they're really into sailing. We use Sendosa or Alex to send them a book on knots or some sort of glassware that's nautical, something along those lines. But again, we've started to interact with them across all platforms, and we're giving them a custom experience based off of the interactions that they've had in previous platforms. And that is often the part that's missed. I mean, obviously, the hardest part for these is coming up with the ideas for them. But the main thing to remember is all the previous steps need to inform the future steps. If we are selling what's on the back of the truck just because that's what we have and we don't want it anymore, they're going to see right through that and be not interested. But if we say, I noticed you took an interest in this. I noticed this is the specific webinar we looked at. Given your company's size and all these things being true, this is the specific offer that's relevant to you. We want to be delivering value. Unless we understand their problem and are talking to them with context that makes it clear that we're selling to them as an individual, their problems specifically at their company, that's what gets through to them, because people don't want to be sold anymore. They want to be helped. And all of this technology makes it easy to transition into just, I know all these things, you've done all these things, these are the things that will help you. And just tuning that over time is the biggest crux. All of this is going to change constantly, but all of the data is real time and always available. But even the statistical modeling is built into Outreach, so you don't even need to go back and worry about sample size, because stats is the worst class in all of college. Hate stats, but they are done for you, which is really wonderful.
This gets me so excited because, we talk a lot about speed to lead, and all this technology helps that velocity. You can get to the lead faster, but it also gives you like a bespoke experience for that lead. So it's not just speed for speed's sake, but speed in a very rapid and personalized way. So that gets me super excited.
Yeah, it's best. It's what's best for the customer. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can design your systems and your tools to give your customer an advantage in their problem, you're going to win that business. It's just kind of going back to the basics of what is sales, and sales is just service. I mean, service. I was told a long time ago by a good friend that service is an ultimate sign of love, and it's a way that we can actually go out there and extrovertly or expertly push our care to another individual. And that's the best part that I've found in sales, that I get to be of service and I get to look at your problem and it becomes my problem too. And we get to that end point together. And these tools are so great at making sure that we're empowered and enabled and being the best part of that service. So just look at it from the customer side, and what would you want from your journey, and how do I make these touch points relevant? Because I think a lot of times sales, especially when you start to go at scale, which is really what we've been focused on for the last 5 years, it starts to get spammy, or it may not have that same personalization, and it shouldn't. These tools are designed to allow you to have that human touch point with automation and look at it cohesively with what you already have inside of the walls and what IT's already
Mhm.
said yes to and what the board's already approved from a budget standpoint, and tie them all together so that way that customer has the best experience. You will have a great experience, of course, as a salesperson because you win. But at the end of the day, business is here to serve. And if we can get better at that with the tools that we already have, that's the whole idea.
Yeah, that's spot on. Sorry, go ahead.
But just one more takeaway. If you already own all of the boxes or cans or cylinders, whatever you want to call them, the lines, drawing them doesn't cost anything. This is
Yeah.
functionality you're paying for. All of these integrations, they exist whether or not you use them, but all of this is already paid for. This is additional functionality, additional efficiency, additional automation. This is doing some of your team's work for them without having to invest anything other than a bit of your time to get this set up initially. So it can be massively beneficial in terms of revenue and cost savings without any additional outlay of revenue. And I know that, given the crazy year, 2 years, I don't even know how long it's been at this point, but the wild business times that we're in, everybody's trying to do more with less. The budgets aren't exactly expanding. There are a lot of hiring freezes. This is a way that you can continue to grow without needing to spend money. And I know that that's something we all want to do right now, I think.
Absolutely. Everybody's talking about efficiency. We've actually published a lot of information about efficiency as well. So that's like a very timely topic at the moment. And you talked about like integrating with other teams. Actually, why don't we launch that second poll right now? The question being, are you using outreach for SDRs or other teams? And drop your reply.
This is really consistent to what I see so far, that it is very rare. I'll give it a second for it to fill out a little more. So for starters, I am surprised to see even two saying yes. I don't see enough of this. That it people and it the category is called sales enablement technology. So I think most people just assume that's the only thing it's going to work for. And don't get me wrong, outreach blows sales enablement out of the water. It works incredibly well at that. It is turnkey, just ready to go to have SDRs and to AEs just knocking it out of the park. But it doesn't change the fact that it is actually still very valuable for all these other functionalities. And we can start with renewals. Really, any reminder sequence is already perfect for a renewals team. Also, being able to automate adding people to sequences based off of renewal dates, very, very easy to do. That's probably the lowest lift one that you can do, to basically say, all right, here's a sequence that's, we drop you in the first day you sign your contract, and at 6 months out, here's maybe an opportunity for us to upsell you or see how things are going. 3 months out, all right, renewals coming up, and then 30 days, 15 days, etc. Just making sure that cadence keeps going, just that rhythm to it. That's the perfect sequence for that. That like a perfect fit there. Very easy lift. Support team. And if you really think about what support is, you're just reacting to what people bring in and then responding. Now, I know most of you probably have Zendesk or another tool that handles support, but I also know that the members of your support team also still get emails because some people don't understand how to use that button that's a question mark on your product. And instead, they go to your website, find your support email, and just hammer them with these one-off requests that are very difficult to respond to as you try to funnel them back over. And what I like to do there is throw them into a sequence to remind them that you do have a platform, to ask them to submit a ticket, or even use some automation to create a ticket over in Zendesk based off of the email. So even if you do have another tool that is helping the support team, there's no reason that Outreach can't lend some specific help. Also, if you're not as tickets focused and it's more just about relationship management, Outreach can work very well for a support team as well. The other thing that I see people using Outreach just for SDRs, but not AEs, because again, there's a bit of a miscommunication that, yes, outreach is amazing at fast automated communication, but it doesn't mean it isn't good at incredibly curated hands-on communication. Because just because somebody is the most valuable customer you have, that's not a reason to approach them willy-nilly. That I get it, when you're being more hands-on, you're putting more care into it, but don't you still want to measure, is the call on the third day or the second day better? Don't you still want to have some of your emails pre-written? I get that the email is going to be maybe a third pre-written and you're going to type the rest in, but in terms of the rhythm of when you're talking to people, measuring what isn't effective, measuring what offerings do and don't work, or just automating that if they say they're not interested, putting them into another sequence, just free yourself from the mental load of having to remember what tasks are and aren't due. That alone is worth it. Knowing that you'll never abandon somebody in the middle of the relationship, that is worth it. So the idea that it's an SDR only platform, we got to get rid of that. So even if you're not spreading it outside of the sales department to other teams, it should at least be on every level at sales. Even those most personalized hands-on individuals can benefit really greatly from having outreach in there as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree. I think the renewals and growth AEs are who we're seeing is getting the biggest advantage right out of the gates. It's a relationship tool, right? It's just meant there to make sure that we're present, we're making that contact personal, and growth AE have been taking the tool and running with it. It's wonderful. It's not a prospecting tool; it's a relationship tool.
Yep, it's an end-to-end relationship management and curation tool. And that's the way to look at it. It's not just pitching and selling people. It is managing the relationship you have and measuring what relationships are successful so that we can continue to improve them. I brushed past a topic I wanted to talk about because I got so excited about the diagrams, and it really ties in here as well. So really the idea is we want to get away from a set it and forget it mentality. That if we define the perfect relationship, we need to continue to make that better. Or what is the perfect relationship will change over time. So that is, again, going back to everything being data driven. The absolute worst thing that you can do is once you've got outreach fully set up and it's working perfectly, is to say, okay, good, let's put a pin in that and step back. Don't want to mess with success. That's the opposite of what we want to do. We want to continue to be messing with our success and our failures constantly, just because, what I was saying earlier, keep an eye out for new integrations. Absolutely. How many people here are currently looking at, sorry, that was my very vocal dog. How many people here are currently looking at Outreach's new releases recently, their release notes on what features are coming out? That this product is constantly evolving. Also, all of the products it integrates with are constantly evolving. We're getting thank you, Savannah. They're constantly everything that it's integrating with. So Drift coming out with new functionality all the time. Sendoso coming out with new functionality all the time. None of these things that are new, very few of them cost more money. So essentially, we are getting additional tools added to our subscription for free. So we need to always be up on what is new and what is possible, what integrations, what features, but even our best sequences. Just because a sequence is performing really well doesn't mean it couldn't be better. If it was 5% better and your whole team of 40 people was using it, how much would that impact your revenue? Well, obviously 5%, regardless of how many people, but you get the idea. It's a bigger number as the team gets larger.
Right.
So really, all of these things, you want to set a schedule or maybe even a sequence to remind you when to come back and reevaluate every step of your process, the tools that you're using. There's always room for a little bit of improvement. You don't need to spend all day every day on it, but don't just leave something alone for 6 months ever. There's just usually more juice left in the orange to squeeze, and it would be a waste since you bought that nice orange not to get there.
Yeah,
Now
Ben,
we can get back to the flow.
you just said something that was I thought really interesting. So, are you suggesting that admins maybe create their own sequence for their users to audit their internal sequences and just check and see like how this work with accounts or contacts?
Absolutely. To basically
Yeah.
just say, like you've got a manager who's been creating a lot of content. have a sequence to email them once every 2 months to say, hey, when's the last time you did an audit on your content? Have you taken a look at these new things that could be added to it? Have you examined just the email language or the mix of different types of steps that you're using to see if something could be more effective? Because obviously, you can't check every week. We do need enough data to go through to see what is and isn't working for the
Right.
statistics robot to do its job, so we don't have to think about that. But we need to have reminders to check in, take a look, see what results we've been getting, and try to improve on them.
That's, that's really handy because a lot of times a lot of people will say, sales enablement, sometimes we're getting too enabled on too many things. There's too many, too much to talk about. And it's kind of hard to put that in a cadence that doesn't feel overwhelming. So I feel like that would be a comfortable compromise, like to create that schedule and create that sequence as a reminder. So it's not like you're constantly having to keep up to date on what's the new thing, but what's new and what's working, and then to
Yeah.
do go back and audit that. Are there
And the other
other
thing,
like best in class audit tips and tricks you might want to share?
I'd say the biggest thing is I know you're all here to hear about outreach. Do this to all of your other tools too. That's my other best in class audit. Like, you need to, if you want to get outreach working the best, what is the best thing that Drift can do? Do any of those things now connect back to outreach? You're going to want to do that for your whole tech stack. We have an ebook that we're currently working on, which is, some of these concepts we're presenting today. It's just sort of 7 mistakes that we're making as admins and how to correct and improve them to get more out of our tools. And I'm really applying those today, right here to outreach. But do this to the other things in your tech stack. Get the most out of everything because it all feeds back in. You find a couple new features in each of those tools. These are all things that your sequence could later trigger, right? Trigger could later trigger. Sorry for the redundant wording.
And
Um,
again, you explained to me like this isn't something that, maybe everyone, not every user is going to build these sequences, but what's like the best approach? Like, what's the frequency of which you would say you approach a manager or an admin and say, like, okay, I've looked at this and this is what I need. I need this integration. Like, I mean, there are constant updates to outreach to all the integration partners. Like, is it like a one time a month touch base, or what have you seen other companies do?
I'd say for just line managers doing content, I just say, well, I'll get to integrations in a second, but line managers doing content, month in, check it. Is there enough data to even draw any conclusions?
Mm.
Make sure it's just not a total flop. 2 months in, look at the email content, the subject lines, that type of thing, maybe some of the attachments. 3 months in, that's a time for an overhaul, moving steps closer and further, changing the step mix. I'd say for integrations, once a month might be a little bit aggressive. So workflow once a month, just a quick check-in, see what things are working, what aren't. Integrations and additional functionality, maybe every 2 to 3 months. Maybe every 2 months, talk about the new ones that are out, and then every 4 months, try to make a pretty big look and see if there are any large shifts you want, including like a tool substitution, a new integration, or additional automation. Because while a lot of features are coming out pretty quickly, they're not coming out every 15 days. You don't have to go crazy with it. And
Right.
more importantly, you don't want to react every time there's a new feature. You take a moment, see the 3 or 4 new features, figure out which ones would work, and then take a breath and make a strategic shift rather than constantly changing things on your team and your admins. So we do want to still
Mhm.
balance stability with progress, but even if you're not going to use them right away, you need to know that they're coming out. So as you're forecasting what you're going to be doing in 3 months, you're like, well, I'll definitely be using this feature. I'm just not going to switch over to it till I add these 2 or 3 others. So we switch everything at once, that type of thing. So I guess
Yeah,
batching changes so you can do big
yeah.
strategy.
Mm.
Yeah, go ahead,
I'd say
Chris.
what we've seen that works best is also to align these with your leadership meetings. So if you're doing quarterly leadership meetings, make sure that there's a sequence that kind of mirrors that. So that way you're prepped and you're ready to go because you sit down and it may not be the right time to add integrations, or it may not be the right time because your content is still relatively new, but it is at least something that you can prepare yourself for that meeting with, and you can start to have those discussions because it's relevant, it's timely. So what we see works best is just to look at how many times are you meeting with leadership to have these discussions and putting that cadence together based on that.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for that. And I know you guys also mentioned like even looking at the different features that are offered. A lot of customers or a lot of people out there are re-looking at budgets, and I'm wondering, is this the right tech stack, period, and should I
Yeah.
be looking at some tool consolidation? Do you have any advice on like when you're going through those you know, feature parity type comparisons, what does that look like for some of the clients you've worked with?
I'd say these days, two things are doing the same thing. There better be a darn good reason why the second one is there. And it can't just be unwillingness to adapt. But
Yeah.
oftentimes,
Yeah.
it a lot of it is the way the budgets are structured. That different departments are buying their own tools just for themselves,
Mhm.
but IT still has to support all of them. So I'd suggest going up a level with IT leadership, or maybe like your CRO, whoever's approving these tool purchases from the spend side. I'd start to talk to them because yes, marketing's gonna have a reason they want have one tool, support's gonna have a reason they want another tool, sales gonna have a reason they want another. But the person who makes a decision about all three of those tools would be able to pick one that would work for everyone and would actually care about the savings rather than the individualized budgets. So that's probably my best idea there. Curtis, it looked like you were going off mute, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, I think you kind of nailed it there. What we're seeing that's again the teams that we're seeing the most success are is being able to spread that budget to the different departments. So, if the SDR team has a limited budget, but the outreach tool is extremely uh, advanced, then you're sharing that with the AEs. That budget gets to be spread across both departments. And, it's hard to say that there's tool redundancy because every department uses the tools differently, as been pointed out. So being able to sit there and say, hey, all of these do talk to each other. This department probably needs to adopt this workflow, but this department can't. That's okay. Those things are fine. But having that discussion and being able to know what the tools can and can't do and how to
Mhm.
integrate them better is what we're seeing is kind of the companies we've enjoyed their transitions and the conversations that we've had because they're looking at it holistically. It's not just hey the siloed sales team or this siloed marketing team or the siloed customer success
Right.
or it's going and talking to everybody and getting everybody in the room and understanding how each department's workflow is and then what tools are supporting that and there may be some redundancy for a reason.
Mhm.
Having some backups and having fail safes is not a bad thing, especially from a communication and a revenue standpoint. But having the bigger conversations is what people have been now open to in the last 6 months, where before I think we threw headcount at it. Now we're looking at the tools and finding efficiencies.
I
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
two other quick things. One, whenever you can, give instead of taking away, and show instead of telling. So essentially, if you're saying, I am replacing this tool with outreach, but A, it can do everything that tool did, and you get all these additional things on top. So things are changing, but they're changing for the better. Show the value, show that they're now getting more capability. That yes, you're going to have to use a new tool, but this new tool is more powerful. And the show rather than tell, don't just tell them that it can do it. Just be like, look how many fewer clicks your team has to go through.
Mhm.
Look how much more current their information is. You're going to want to at least build it out preliminarily for them. And if you're crack admin, absolutely go edit. Or contact outreach, contact one of outreach's partner, us, or anyway. But either figure it out yourself and build it for them, or find somebody who can. But you're going to need to show it to them because people aren't going to believe. And I really, it is the truth throughout. People are used to being overpromised by technology because the past 10 years things everybody's been hearing about AI and how wonderful it's going to be, and it's barely starting to deliver. So people are untrusting of anything new, especially if it's meaning that they will have to change their habits and the way they work. So we need to get them excited about the additional value rather than nervous about the change. We're not replacing it with something that's
Mm.
equal. We are going to build this thing for you that does half of your job and makes the other half easier. We've got to, they need to want it. Like what I always say about my onboardings is setting up outreach is incredibly easy. I have done it 500 times, but like getting Salesforce connected, building all the rule sets, profiles, that's old hat for me at this point. Explaining it to the managers and training them up, also quite easy. Smart people, very hungry for the information. The hardest part of my job is getting end users to trust and want to use the product. Hands down, twice as hard as everything else combined. And I onboard for a ton of other tools as well, and that is universal across every tool. So we need to realize that there is an emotional and political side of this. Yes, there's getting leaders buy-in, but we need to show the users that their jobs are going to be easier, that the information is going to be easier to track, that we're eliminating manual effort, that we're basically taking anything that doesn't require them actually thinking and putting that on a robot, because we actually value their thoughts. We value their ability to be human, intelligent, empathetic, have a sense of humor, that's what makes them valuable as AEs, SDRs, support reps. It's that human side. All the other stuff that's just boring to them and not actually helping them grow as a professional should be handled by automation. So we need to let them know that we're delivering for them. We're delivering value. We're being of service, as Curtis was saying. And that is really what all of this is about. So we as managers and configurers, we do that to our reps. We make their lives easier, and our reps to our customers provide more relevant information, respond more quickly. It's, again, just deliver value, and it just continues to flow in that direction. Now, don't get me wrong, it's great for senior leadership too, but at this point, once it's been bought, they already know that. So we're going to talk about you, the end user, and the customer as well.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the tool that wins is the tool that's fastest time to value. It just doesn't matter. So whether it's an argument on budget and what department, let's go of one tool because there's redundancy, the tool that wins is the one that is able to deliver the value fastest. And being able to empower all of the tools together is something that Outreach does really well. And there's a ton of different examples on how to do that. But that's the name of the game. Is how do we get to the most valuable side of that product the fastest?
That's great. Thank you. I feel like I took us way off topic. We've got 4 minutes left.
Open form. That's how it works.
You had good questions. I got excited.
These are all, like, as you're talking, these thoughts, and from what I hear from my colleagues and from what I hear in the marketplace, these are things that people are regularly talking about, and it just seems like the cohesion, the consolidation, all these things are very timely and topical at the moment. So thank you for addressing that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that I had some time. You guys mentioned the ebook, and I think this is going to be valuable information. I don't want the audience to miss out on that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yep. Sorry. Thought the Curtis was going to take it, but I'll jump right in. So basically, we've been working on an ebook, our whole team. It's our learnings from not only the 500 outreach, setups and integrations, but a lot more about our enterprise work, where we're connecting a bunch of different tools together. But really, it's just addressing common issues that we are all having that are holding us all back. And the ones I talked about today: lack of cohesion, siloing and single department adoption. Let's see, what was the other one? Basically just in general. We've got four others. I just thought those three would be most relevant for this webinar. But really, you can use this approach to take a look at any of your tools and how you're using it. That these are just the ways that we are not getting enough data. I mean, every tool is an iceberg, and we see 20% of the value floating above the water, and then 80% we don't even realize is there, because obviously they're publicizing what's going to work for everybody. But a lot of the things that are niche could be really, really valuable. And if you 80% to find that other 15 that is immensely valuable, just given your specific business case, you're never going to realize how much you could get. And that is absolutely true with outreach. There are so many things that I wasn't doing in my first year that in my fourth year I do all the time. But it's true about all your other tools too. And more importantly, it is true about how your tools interact. So we'll get that out to you. I think the next week we should have it finished and polished and gone off to the art department and everything. But essentially, it's just a way that you can look at your entire ecosystem that your team uses and find efficiencies, find ways to improve, find ways to deliver more value to your customers and to deliver more value to your end users as well.
That's exciting. And so go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I mean, just to wrap up, it's kind of a snapshot of what we're seeing our best customers doing and what they've kind of set up. And there's a ton of different ways to say what not to do. And I think what we get asked probably the most is what do you actually do? And
Right.
it's a quick snapshot of what we've seen be successful throughout our time, and it's a little heavier focused on what bigger companies are doing and then how they're kind of looking at this cohesively. But I think smaller companies are generally following what bigger companies are being able to do because they have the budgets and the time and the people to be able to have those conversations.
Yep.
Right.
And whether you're looking at, it's still the same way that you look at the, looking for the same efficiencies, commonalities, and that type of thing.
Right. And I know that you guys have a waiting list for that ebook. When we send out the follow-up with a recording for this, we can drop that link in there, or we'll also leave your contact information. Can the audience contact you directly if they want to get on the waiting list?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. I
Please
had to put you guys out there
get on
just
the
like
waiting list.
widespread.
No. I mean, we're an open book.
Okay.
So we're happy to have these conversations, and quite frankly, this is what we really get up out of the bed for. So
Right.
it's been a fun 5 years because it's been an obsession of ours and just a passion. And I don't think either of us go to work regretting it or begrudging it or anything like that. So the more conversations we can have, and people are absolutely wonderful with their ideas and what their experiences are, and they're all very, very unique. And this is the position that we're able to kind of be of service in. So it's wonderful.
Yeah,
That's
we
great.
love solving puzzles and talking through these broad concepts and kind of getting to the root of them. So reach out. We're really open to communication. So happy to discuss.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we will send out that link for the waiting list for the ebook, as well as your contact information in the follow-up email, so that you can reach out and get a copy of that ebook. In the meantime, if you want to continue the conversation, please make sure that you jump on SalesHacker and start a conversation there, ask your questions, or if you want to email directly to Ben and Curtis, please feel free to do so. You can also see us on Revenue Innovators, our podcast, where we put you on the hot mic and test all the hot newest things for revenue out there. And also join us for our Women in Sales Summit that's happening starting September 19th. If you want to hear our keynote, Venus Williams, and get a lot of great information there. But thank you again for joining us. If you guys have a chance, please take a chance to look at the email following this webinar for more contact information.
Thanks, everybody. This is wonderful.
Thanks for the
Thanks.
active participation. Great audience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.